for example. I'm just throwing it out. Like there are influencers who make a lot more than our bosses, for example. but they like.
अरे बाप रे, ये तो धोती खोल रहा है.
They like to do that.
Hey, hi everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you, Kushal, for organizing this. Thank you so much for coming out on a Saturday morning. I apologize if my voice is a little low. Last night went a little hard. So look, man, compensation will be compensated well. You trust me, will be compensated well. I used to live in Jogeshwari 6 months ago. Now I stay in Lodha Park in Local, so clear.
भाई पैसा हो तो क्या कुछ नहीं हो सकता.
So I think without further ado, it's like an honor for me also to invite our speakers for the evening. Let's give a huge round of applause for Anuvrat, Ahmed and Akshay. Guys, please come. Anuvrat Jain, he's popularly called as AJ in the VC industry. AJ is working at Lightspeed. He's the vice president of the growth team. He's also a Forbes 30 under 30, by the way, like one of the youngest vice presidents at Lightspeed. He's just 29. You're 29, right? Yeah, he's just 29, by the way. And yeah, I think yeah, he's like very humble and modest. So I think he prefers being called as AJ. So after the session, you can just call him AJ. And the last one, Ahmed. So let's give a huge round of applause for the three of them, guys. And thank you so much to the three of you for coming here and gracing the audience. So maybe we can just start off, like probably the three of you, if you can tell us about your journeys in brief in a couple of minutes, and then we can take this ahead if that's fine. So we can start off with, let's say, oh by the way, like all three of you, your name starts with A, so but yeah, I mean that's just a coincidence. Yeah, we can't go alphabetically. I mean, we can, but yeah, it's fine. So probably AJ, we can start off with you, then Ahmed. Then Akshay.
Yeah, sure. Hi guys, great to be here. Thank you of course for coming on on Saturday morning for this. AJ this side, as Kushal mentioned, I'm part of the Lightspeed investment team in India. Look at India and Southeast Asia for us. On the investing side, started my journey almost 9 years back now, 8-9 years back. I did my undergrad at SRCC in Delhi University. Got into investment banking, very classic path, investment banking to investing. Got my first job in Bombay, then moved to London for a year or so. Then I wanted to come back to India, so came back. Spent a few years in investment banking, then moved to a different investment firm called KwK. They are one of the oldest private equity firms in the country. Spent half a decade there, across multiple sectors. And then the opportunity to invest at Lightspeed came up, where I am managing the office for growth investments in India and Southeast Asia. So that's roughly my professional journey, and I'll let Akshay and Ahmed also speak about this.
Yeah, you did not mention about your Forbes 30 under 30, but yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. Kushal mentioned, so that happened sometime this year. But yeah. Okay.
Hey, hi everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you, Kushal, for organizing this. Thank you so much for coming out on a Saturday morning. I apologize if my voice is a little low. Last night went a little hard. So my name is Ahmed. I work at SoftBank. In terms of my professional journey, like Kushal mentioned, I'm a CA. So all the CAs, yeah, someone made it. So you made it to somebody. So out of CA, I did my articleship from KPMG in audit. I realized I would go audit for the rest of my life. I moved into investment. I was very fortunate. I got an internship at PAML in their investment banking team. PAML is Bank of America, for those who don't know. I worked in investment banking for 2 years, and then I got an opportunity to work at SoftBank in their India investment team. yeah, I've been at SoftBank for 2 years now, and like I said, we look at all India investments, we're tech focused fund across anything and everything in tech.
So, so yeah, you just mentioned last night was hard. So was it hard because of work or because of party?
Money. Money, yeah.
Oh yeah, so got it. So yeah, I think one of the myths is also that people who are into these renowned companies, they don't party a lot, but I think we have a perfect example over here of a person who has been sounding different because of the late night parties. Let's go to Akshay, maybe a quick introduction, and then we can just set the context.
Is this okay?
Whom just ask me.
We will practice. Hi folks, thank you for showing up and thanks Kushal for organizing this. I'm Akshay, I work in the investment team at Sequoia. I work in the growth investment team at Sequoia, so we have different teams across early stages and late. And the late stage team is what I represent. Spent close to 6 years in my professional journey. First 3 years were in consulting. So I graduated, I did my engineering from IT Bombay, and post that I joined consulting. Investing was something that I never knew I had interest in, but I just sort of stumbled upon this opportunity, thought that it would be interesting, let me give it a shot. Thankfully it worked out, and over the last 3 years at Sequoia, I think I've thoroughly enjoyed it. So looking forward to answering any questions around investing, growth investing, or whatever you have in general.
Perfect. So thank you so much to the three of you for giving the quick round of introduction. So one is an IIT Bombay alum, one is an SRCC alum, one is a CA alum. So I think we have a diverse set of speakers as well. If you have any specific questions after, related to these speeches as well, you can feel free to ask them. So let's begin with AJ. First things first, what exactly is venture capital industry? What kind of work do you do? If you can just guide the audience about the industry nuances. And secondly, the difference between venture capital and growth investing as these two sectors as such.
Yeah, so funnily, all three of us do more growth than venture. And it just hit me. But broadly, guys, think of investing as putting your dollars at work in companies who can potentially create products or services that, in one way or the other, benefit all of us. It could be someone like Reliance, Infosys, Razorpay, or anything, something like that, right? Across different sectors. The idea of venture capital is obviously, as the name says it out loud, is investing in very, very early companies. These could be just, great founders or potentially great visionaries just thinking about a product and then getting funding at that thinking level to companies which have just built over the last 1-2 years. So venture investment focuses on that, companies in their very, very nascent stage, and then as they grow into something more meaningful, that's when growth investors come in. That's effectively again in the name, which is growth investing. As they have started on their growth journey, there is early product market fit, consumers are liking it, the feedback is good, and then the growth investing journey is actually a very large phase, because you can have an early hyper-phase growth, then medium growth, and then slow growth. Again, it's a base effect. Right? Like TCS 10 years ago was growing 50% year on year. Today, it doesn't grow 50% year, but it still grows. So the growth investing phase is obviously as large as it can get. And then you have extremely late stage where people are buying out companies, but that's also a different part of investing. So that's broadly it. Anything else? Akshay, if you want to add.
I think one way to think about it is what kind of investing do you want to do, right? Venture is a little bit more unstructured growth. As you move, like Anuvrat said, right? There's venture, there's growth, and then there's pure traditional private equity, right? Think of it as you move along this chain, the data, it's less people and more data. Like venture, let's say, so betting more on the founder, very unstructured, very early, like I said, it's betting on the idea and whether this guy can execute or not. Growth, like you said, a little bit more data, like you said, this product market fit, you're seeing the right trends, at least it's moving in the right direction. And then private equity is again looking at last 10 years of data, these businesses very mature and don't grow way too much but generate a lot of cash flow. So again, a very different ball game. Return expectations in all three are very different. Venture again, very high risk, but you're essentially hoping that's maybe a 10x growth, maybe you're solving for a 3x. Again, private equity, maybe 3x, maybe 2x. Really depends on the asset.
So I think from what I understand is that like growth investing is quite similar to private equity as well, like where you guys have to invest in companies and the ticket sizes and the check sizes are much larger than the venture capital industry. So like for example, if an early stage VC would put in a check of $1 million or $10 million, like a growth investor or a private equity guy would put in a check of maybe around 200 mil, 100 million, something of that sort.
Anywhere from 30 to, again, in India it could be anywhere from 30 to 300 million. In the US, given the company, the economy is large, even billions of dollars can be counted as growth investment. But yeah, the work, everything remains the same except the stage of companies, I would say. And relatively maybe growth companies in these markets could be younger founders, younger generation, more unique ideas. Whereas private equities slightly comes in a bit later by the nature of it.
So one thing to add, I think there is a difference. I wouldn't call like growth and PE are very similar. Like I think one major difference is essentially the kind of sectors you would invest in. So traditionally, like growth investing is more late stage investment, but in VC kind of sectors which are more new age, tech enabled, etc. versus private equity funds. Now they have increasingly started to do that. By the way, a lot of private equity funds would also do growth investing, would also do technology investments. But in the traditional sense, the growth investing is closer to say all these tech-enabled sectors, and yeah, like there's a nuance of check size, but I would say the bigger nuance is the kind of sectors you would do. For example, you would very rarely see a growth investing fund similar to what we guys do, investing in maybe say a tires company, for example, or a pure play pharmaceutical company, for example. So these are the kind of things which very rarely growth investors would do, but that's something which is say a bread and butter of private equity fund. So that is one major difference.
Right, I think makes sense. Just one quick question to Akshay, since you've been at Sequoia since the last few years. If you were to advise these people, like what are some of the possible paths or what are some of the possible routes to get into a growth investing or a venture capital fund kind of a thing? So what are like some of the alternatives, or people can just get into growth investing through these possible routes?
Yeah, I would say there are probably like three major sort of routes through which people, at least what I have seen in the last few years, through which people enter this industry. And obviously the answer is a bit nuanced when you talk about venture or growth. Growth, as these guys have already said, it's more analytical, it's more sort of data driven, and hence you need people who have probably done that or who have that kind of analytical rigor in them, which means like people either who have consulting experience or banking experience is someone like, or maybe in some cases like people who have, in Anuvrat's case for example, he has had investing experience directly, right? So like these are the people who would probably find a better fit in growth, is what at least we feel internally. And I'm sure the ideology changes with funds, so I can only speak about Sequoia. But in growth, like we specifically try to sort of stick to these profiles. But when it comes to venture, the role changes quite a bit, right? It's about like being out there, being like, it's about knowing what all is happening in the ecosystem, getting to these companies faster, understanding these companies much better. And these trends, for example, some of the trends are really new, like something new is coming up, nobody knows, very few people are talking about it, and someone is building a company. So you need to be catching these trends, which means that someone who has an operator experience, someone who has been a founder, these are the kind of people who would also find sort of a good entry point into a venture capital, into the classic venture investing role, apart from the other things that I mentioned. So it's not like a consultant or a banker to some extent may not find a role in a venture investing, but like even the founders or the operators do find good opportunities. At least that's what I've seen in my experience. But others should
Yeah, makes sense. And one common question which all of us get is that even when I'd asked them like what kind of questions do you want to ask the speakers, one common question was the relevance of doing an MBA in order to get into these funds. So what are your thoughts on that? And is it mandatory to do an MBA if you want to get into these funds? Although we have examples of people who have not done their MBA and they're still there. But what are your thoughts on that?
Funnily, we are not educated enough, all three of us, and we haven't done our MBA, is a funny coincidence. But see again, a lot depends fund to fund. A lot of funds have those specific rules that you need to do an MBA to get in. Some funds have the rules that you need to do an MBA to grow up in the system. Like you have early analyst programs, or a lot of funds have a pre-MBA program. Like even Sequoia has one, for example. So it's a very much fund to fund thing. If you were to ask me 5-7 years back, was the importance of MBA very high? Yes. It's obviously come down with time as people obviously get more skilled. Consulting and banking really trains you to get in at least. So I wouldn't say that MBA is a very strong necessity to get in, but I would say MBA still is very important for folks to grow into the roles, for example, that we are in. So again, don't take us as standard examples. If anyone in the room is obviously wanting to do an MBA, would highly encourage you guys to at least pursue that. Again, pursue it for the right reasons. Don't just pursue it for a job, but we can obviously chat about that separately. But just to shortly answer, to get in, no. In some places to grow, yes.
I'd say it helps. Definitely, I'm not in the CA, but if I had to look at my team, right, I think we have so it's a 6-member team at SoftBank in India. 3 of the team, 3 people are MBAs and 3 are non-MBAs. The head of SoftBank India, who's now moved to London, he's not an MBA. He's an LSE grad. He wanted to go to business school, but he got a job at Norwest, and he worked there for 10 years. The boss was like, look, you don't have to go, there's a path for you to grow. So again, man, like Anuvrat said, if you want to go for it, if you have the right reasons, you should go for it.
So Ahmed, like you said, it's a 6-member team at SoftBank. So I'm sure like it's very difficult for a person to get into SoftBank because of the firstly lower vacancies, and of course like you would also have a set of criteria of selecting people and candidates. Wanted to understand your entire interview experience at SoftBank. What helped you in order to clear them? What are some of the resources that you used in order to prepare for your interviews? And it's a myth that a lot of people think that, like since most of them are CAs and they would be able to relate to your story, a lot of people think that CA में अगर rank आया तो ये सब benefits या opportunities मिल सकती है. And clearly like you have not secured rank in. So this. No, I think you're way more intelligent. So the thing is that I wanted to bust this myth that it's not necessary that okay you have to get a rank in your CA to get into these companies. So can you just walk us through that entire process?
Yeah, so look, in terms of interview prep, right, so like I said, I came from investment banking. Again, when I was interviewing for buy side, so look, I'll tell you how the buy side interview process works, right? Typically the first round will be, like say, maybe it's an HR round, maybe it's an exploratory chat. They'll talk about your deal. Like for me, I came from investment banking, so I spoke about my deal experience. I worked on the sell side. I worked on a few IPOs. I don't think that's very relevant in my side. I worked on the sell side M&A, which I talked about a lot. So we will have around, again, these are very, buy side interviewing process is very rigorous. These interviews can get very intense in terms of the kind of questions you will get asked. It is like a 45-minute, 1-hour grilling session. It's very numbers heavy. You need to be on top of your numbers. You need to understand the P&L of the business very well. You need to understand why did the deal happen, what are the risks in this deal, why did the X person invest in this business, what was his rationale. You need to be able to articulate all of these things. I look, in investment banking, you are not expected to know the ins and outs of the deal. Again, this is investment banking at the end of the day is like kind of like a sales job, but then you should know at least what you're selling. If you don't know what you're selling, then really what are you going to do? Right? Again, then so once those rounds are done, then there'll typically be a case study round where you will be given some data. You'll be expected to prepare a 3-statement financial model, which will be your P&L, balance sheet, cash flow. You'll be expected to prepare. You may or may not be expected to prepare a short deck which will cover what is good in this business, what is the general, basically investment thesis of why did you invest. Be on top of your numbers, know what work you've done, go through your CV really well. There'll be a case study round. You'll expect to be like a 4-5 hour case study. Prepare the model. You may or may not have to prepare a short deck and present. And the last round will typically be with like the head of the fund. Again, this will be a little bit more of a fit test, like whether okay, so maybe you're really smart, maybe you did the case study well, but typically buy side is a very low churn business, not like investment banking where in and out 2 years. Buy side you're typically expected to stay on for like 5-10 years. That's just the nature of the business. So the fit test over here is very important, that the guy will typically assess that whether I can work with this person or not. You know, like let's say if I do trade accrual, it's a vibe check. Right? So that again is a very important part of the interview process. In terms of the materials I leverage, look man, I guess it's all out there. Some funds are typically a bit more consulting heavy, so they'll ask you those consulting type case studies. Again, these materials are all online. You will find those case study books. You can look at those. If you come from investment banking, I guess you know how PNL works. Some of you are CAs, you will understand. It's not, none of this are rocket science. The very first principles. Investors are typically not very smart, so you don't have to worry. This is very first principles.
Thanks.
Maybe AJ is 30 or 30, but most of us are a little bit first principles. So yeah, again, it's not none of this is rocket science. Just basic understanding of a P&L and a little bit consulting case studies, then I guess you'll be fine. It's a little bit, the process is iterative. Like you will get better with every interview. That personally happened for me. I don't know anyone who's cleared a buy-side interview in the first crack. Right? This is a very iterative process. You will have to keep giving these interviews, and with each interview you will get better. You will see it in you. Like ask for feedback at the end of the interview, what I do right, what I do wrong. I always do that. And most people are nice enough to give feedback.
How many rounds of interviews you had?
At SoftBank, I think it was 4 rounds, man. I met both the directors and the VP on the same day. There was a case study round and there was the final round. So that was very fun.
Got it. So over to you, AJ. I think we've got to know, like, from the perspective of a person who would want to appear for interviews. Now, since you're the VP at Lightspeed, I'm sure like you would also recruit a lot of people. You would also conduct a lot of interviews. What exactly do you look for in candidates, and maybe what type of questions do you ask your potential interviewees who are there, and what kind of judgment do you just foresee?
Yeah, so I think Ahmed obviously covered that. The questions are obviously, the points he made around test on your knowledge of understanding a business, test of knowledge of understanding a P&L as I think, I don't know, Akshay or Ahmed said at the start, right, that at least for growth investing a lot, maybe I'll talk about growth first and then I'll talk about venture. For growth investing, a lot happens on numbers and data, how well you can analyze it, and again, let me rephrase, analysis I think a lot of people can do, what insights can you bring out, which could be unique to you, could not be unique to you, but can you think in that structured direction? I think that's the most important thing we all check, is how deeply and how broadly you can think at the same time, like how deep can you go and how zoom in and zoom out, the capability of that. One very, very important other aspect that becomes on the qualitative side is, as it's very common to say that be hustly, which becomes very, very important in this investing industry as well, because the hours are long. So there will come a time where you may feel that, I'm tired of feeling burnt out. Of course, you should rest, but then that journey continues for a while. And you have to keep out there, as Akshay mentioned, right? You have to keep searching for ideas. That requires a lot of reading, that requires a lot of researching, going out in the market, talking to different experts in different industries. Like for example, if something's coming up on let's say financial services, talking to payments companies, talking to banks, talking to lending companies, talking to government, talking to these fintechs, so on and so forth. So that requires a different level of hustle. So I would say these 2-3 areas, and as Ahmed also mentioned, fit becomes very, very important. So fit is not just your skill set or your CV. Fit also is also like how you work within a team. How good are you in taking instructions and implementing them, and also taking initiative, right? So it works both ways. It's not a very, I tell you to do ABCD. It's not a task list or a to-do list job. Investing is not at all. At any level, it's not. Even at junior levels, there is a massive opportunity to innovate in the process yourself, and people are always open to it. So how you can take those initiatives. So I think these are the tenets that work across all types of investing, whether it's venture, whether it's growth, whether it's private equity. Growth and private equity, analysis, numbers, Excel modeling skills, a bit on articulation, as Ahmed also mentioned, becomes very, very important. And again, hustle and going out there. On the venture side, what also becomes very, very important is less on numbers, more on hustle, more on character, more on how good are your people reading skills, how good are your networking skills. You could be an introvert, but you could be great at networking, for all you know, right? Because introvert and networking don't or can go hand in hand and can also not go hand in hand. How much can you adapt? Because these are skills we can acquire, and as Ahmed mentioned, there is no rocket science in what anything we do. A lot of things can be acquired, learned on the job. Sometimes people have raw talent for it, you just need to find it. So hustle, going out there, networking skills, researching skills. I think these are the few things we obviously look at. And one important other thing that becomes is for all of us is we just check out the real reason why this candidate wants to get into investing. Like, is there genuine interest or not? And there are ways to figure that out during conversation. During those, as Ahmed said, these interviews can get stressful. It's not because you're asked 500 data questions, but it's an environment one-on-one where we'll check the real reason why you're leaving your current job, how was the performance in the previous job, and so on and so forth, just to test those parameters. So I think it's not a broad checklist, but a lot of areas we spend time on.
Yeah, makes sense. So maybe like if you can help the audience understand how do you develop these skills that you mentioned, both the hard skills as well as the soft skills, the ones which are like networking skills or let's say the hustling one which you mentioned, and how do you develop this? Does it come over time? Is there anything that can be done to improve, or maybe what you did in order to groom or maybe in order to develop these skills?
So I think basic stuff is, that gene of the curiosity gene. I think all of us have it. People need to just find it. Some people have it raw and very, very excited. Some people take their own time, but everyone has those certain areas they're curious about. So I think if you're curious about that, just work on that from a research perspective, from finding those trends perspective. There are always, you can't always know everything about everything, like no one is a Wikipedia, but there are areas where you could be excited. So keep doing that. And for example, if any of you is excited about, I'm just randomly going to say spices industry for some reason, right? Like that, then you can use that interest to learn broadly about the consumer industry, broadly about the FMCG industry, learn broadly about the commerce industry. So like for example, those are the research skills that all of us acquire, and we all learn in our schools and colleges and other jobs, and just honing that on, not stopping on that front and finding the right sector that you are curious about. The other thing on the networking side, I think, as I said, right, that going out there, like it's very easy for extroverts to network in general. I am an extrovert, so I generally don't find it hard. But I have a lot of friends who by innate are introverts, but they are amazing at networking. So I think it's that minor barrier that a lot of people have in their heads, can I do it or not? So just start with small groups. Start with your own core friends. Could be college group, could be school group. Start meeting diverse people. Don't hang out in the same group at all times, because that helps expand how you think, how you react, how you learn new things. You always get new material, you learn about new things. Also again goes back to the curiosity point. So hang out in start with smaller groups if by chance you struggle with that. Be part of diverse groups, school, family, whatever it is. Some people may require coaching as well, so don't feel hesitant on that. It's a very, very normal thing. It's like your weekend match, you go to a match tuition. It's as normal as that. So I would say, if needed, do that, but very easy immediately to work on. And then once you start it, it's like you've rolled the tires. It's like the car is going up to, let's say, you have to go take it to 100. Once you reach the 30, 40, you just have to, keep doubling down on that. And then you'll keep going in. Once you crack the networking thing, when you start feeling confident in your own skin, it starts working. True for research, true for financial analysis. Your first ever balance sheet model 3 statement dies. The confidence goes up massively. Just use that to do it for the second time, do it the third time, do it the fourth time, and then automatically it becomes very robotic. It's like, algebra. The first time you see algebra, some people may find it, it's a bit tricky at a young stage, but when now everyone knows those properties, everyone just can solve it. Once you solve 10 questions, the 11th question becomes easy. I have always applied that principle to everything. Networking, financial skills, oratory skills, going out there, so on and so forth. So I think that's at least my take. Ahmed, Akshay, if you have anything else, please feel free to add.
Yeah, I think some of these parts already Anuvrat alluded to, but whenever you are appearing for an interview, as he said, nobody expects you to be an expert, but they expect you to know something. For example, if you are appearing for a VC interview or a growth investing interview, they would expect you to have some sort of interest. And that interest is not just saying that, hey, I'm very interested. Like we recently sort of interviewed a bunch of candidates for roles of and there were a lot of people who said, look, we are very interested and this is something that we wanted to do for the last 3 years of our lives and whatnot. But then you need to demonstrate that in terms of some form of knowledge. For example, if you just pick 2 sectors, let's say hypothetically if you're interested in EV, as Anuvrat said, just know the in and out of EV, like know the top 5 companies in the EV space, what are the challenges they are facing, what is the opportunity, why is that interesting, why is that not interesting. And honestly today, the kind of coverage the sector sees is significantly higher, even in the public domain versus where it was probably 5 years back, 4 years back. Like you have so many deep dives on companies, and on private companies, you have numbers that are published, what is right, what is wrong about these companies, what are investors thinking. So it's fairly easy if you are husky enough to get access to many of these articles and like form a point of view. And I think that's something that we really sort of appreciate in interviews, seeing someone put in those efforts and hours to understand and have a point of view. Look, that point of view could be wrong because we do appreciate that all of you are still at very, very early in your careers. The kind of access to information that you guys have is probably not at the same level as someone sitting in an institutional sort of fund would have. So everyone understands that, but having a point of view, showing that effort, and doing that hard work is something which is really appreciated. So more tangibly, I would say that is something, if you're genuinely interested in investing, that is something you should start doing. Then actively identify 2 or 3 sectors where you are genuinely interested in, start reading about companies, start knowing about them and having a point of view.
What would be your learning resources in terms of how do you, let's say, stay updated with what's happening in the economy? If you can share some podcasts or maybe some news articles or not articles like newspapers or any of that sort, what would be your learning resources? Like all the 3 of you, we can start on.
Yeah, honestly, I'm an old school person that way, so I religiously read like Economic Times every day. I think it really helps me. A lot of people don't appreciate it, but I've seen it help me in situations where I would not expect it to help me. So when I look at a very, very random sector, for some reason I have a point of view, and that's because probably like 3 months back I had read something, or in the last 6 months I've been passively exposed to some information in that sector which I was not intending to know, but I just got that information. And on top of that, a lot of things, look, as you start doing this job, you realize that you are just exposed to a lot of information, and there are times in the day where you feel like, look, I want to do ABC, and let me just ignore the WXYZ which is being thrown at me, which you tend to do. But like if there is a constant source of sort of new information which keeps on coming at you, I think it really helps. And for me, that is like reading the financial newspaper every morning. But apart from that, like really depends on which sector or what you are really targeting. So I mean, for example, I also read TechCrunch. Like I have a email from TechCrunch every day. There are certain blogs that I have subscribed to that I sort of read periodically. Whenever, let's say, I'm working out or whatever, and I can passively listen to podcasts. There are a few podcasts. Again, like Invest Like the Best, etc., where a lot of people who have been extremely senior investors, they talk about their journey and how they think about investing. So I would say like it's really sort of contextual, but these are the few sources which I regularly sort of subscribe to.
Got it. That's helpful. AJ, if you would want to add your learning resources.
Yeah, I think Akshay said a very important line. News is probably the most underrated source of information out there. It is very, very important, I would say. I think it is the most important resource out there. Global news, India news, whatever interests you. If it doesn't interest you, I think force yourself to find it interesting, because it is required in investing. Like I need to know if something changes in AI tomorrow. At least you should know. Have a small POV, especially if you're doing venture. News becomes more important about trends and all, but I think news is my go-to source as well. There are days I read 5 newspapers. There are days I don't read any, but then I find time to go and go back to those. And when I say newspapers, I also mean blogs and those websites like Economic Times, Wall Street Journal, TechCrunch, so on and so forth. Whatever you find interesting. If there are some sectors you like for example, let's say someone likes public markets a lot. There is ample journals out there. The Dalal Street Journal is there, Trade Secret Journal. So there is ample public published material out there. Another big resource is YouTube. But the problem of having that resource is there is so much to consume that you may get lost, which could mean you may be looking at, you may want to learn about, let's say hypothetically you want to learn about digital payments, or you want to learn about, let's say, D2C brands. you could find a million videos, and you could waste hours on seeing 20 videos and just realize you may have not learned something nice. So then it becomes like a needle in a haystack approach. But then there are ways to filter that out. When you read these news articles, talk to these circles, you'll hear about that podcast. Like for example, Akshay has mentioned one, Invest Like the Best. Right? So at least go try it out if that's what interests you. You can see how many viewers are there. You can read some comments and figure out if this is relevant or not. And the good part about
Any other podcasts you listen to on a regular basis?
So I think there is, again, I like history a lot, so I listen to a history podcast. There is this knowledge project, and there is a podcast called Acquired. Again, these are not the ones I listen every day. I think he was about to mention Acquired or something. So these are not some things I listen to every day. I don't listen to every single episode, but these are some I definitely go to a lot. Again, it's relevant to my industry, may not be relevant to everyone in the audience, but you will find those. Like I found these podcasts through my friends in the industry, through some ET article. These ET articles also mention a lot about this. Like ex-investor said in that podcast, okay, you found it. You just need to Google it. Most of the stuff is free. That's even better, right? So again, it's not costly to learn all this stuff.
Ahmed?
So in terms of podcast, again, Acquired is a very good podcast. Yeah. So basically, those of you who don't know Acquired, basically they take a new company every episode. They typically tech businesses, and they tell you the entire history of the company, the founders, how they started out. So it's very good, and they speak very well, very easy to understand. For layman, so you should check it out. In terms of what I read, like you said, right, news, all of that. There also a lot of good alternate source of journalism today, right? Like, I'm a reader of the Ken, Morning Context. There is something called the Cap Table. There is a very new website that just came out called the Arc. So you should look at these sorts of journalism as well. Again, one point AJ mentioned was that for people who are in investment banking, you guys will have your own proprietary research materials. Like at least at Babel, I was blessed. I had access to Babel research. So that is where I built most of my understanding of businesses. So typically when a research analyst initiates his view, or so these reports are called initiation coverage reports, where you initiate your research on a particular company. So these are typically like detailed reports, 40, 50, 60 pages. So that will give you a lot of understanding into the business, the industry, the competitive landscape. Everything you need to know about the business will be there in that one report, and every quarter they will publish an incremental update on the company. So those, again, if you read the initiation report and the latest features report, I think that should be good in terms of your view on a particular business and a particular company.
Sorry, it just hit me, man. I'm not saying initiating coverage report. One thing that I think is again underrated, but I'm sure all of us read it at least, maybe not before, but after investing for sure, is annual reports. If there is a sector you like, there is a company which is public, and it will have an annual report. It's impossible to not find one. Maybe in India you may not find, but globally you will find. And then over there you'll find a lot of resources. If you're excited about, for example, auto, go read Bajaj Auto annual report. If you're excited about oil, pick up Indian Oil, Reliance. If you're excited about payments, there is Square in the US. There is Adyen in Europe. And these are public, these are free resources available on their websites, right? So like a lot of people will say, yeah, I'm not at BAML, I'm not JP Morgan, I don't have access to these research reports. That's fine. These research reports come out of those annual reports. Of course, you may miss out 2 insights, but you'll get 8 if there are 10 in total. So annual reports is very, very, very helpful. I can't even state how important it is. And it's not like you have to read 200 pages. They even give out the sections. Like there is this section called MD&A, Management Discussion Analysis. That covers everything. You want to learn about retail pickup demands, annual report. Within 45 minutes, you'll know everything there is. To at least have a conversation with someone. So that also adds to that networking and that husky confidence, right? Like if you have to talk about grocery market, you read DMART's annual report, you have some numbers in your head, you know the trends. And when you're sitting in front of someone who's an expert, then you can contribute to the conversation and the other person also feel like, okay, this person knows X, I can tell him Y, or maybe you know something that the other person also may not know. Because a lot of times what these experts do is, like I know this industry, I don't need to read the annual report, it's fine. But you never know what you find there.
Yeah, I think that's a very good piece of advice, like reading annual reports which is publicly available of all the listed entities. in India and even outside India, that's like one of the most useful resources to learn and understand about the sector, about the company, about the business model. And the job of any investor would be to understand and evaluate businesses. And the best way to understand businesses would be through reading their annual reports, which are like, of course, very detailed, but again, understanding what is important to read from that annual report, that is something which you will develop over time. Coming back to you, Ahmed, if you can help us understand, like now, I think you're working at SoftBank, you're one of those 6 people who is working at SoftBank, and we also happen to know that you're staying at one of the most lavish buildings of Bombay in Parel.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
You also stay there. Kushal is
So, so actually, yeah, so the point of mentioning this was basically, so we know that you're minting like a lot of money as well because you're staying in a very lavish apartment and all. If you can understand, like help people understand about the general pay scale, general pay range about this industry, maybe a broad range or something like, you know, which can help people understand what are the usual expectations.
Fun question.
So look, man, compensation will be compensated well. Okay, trust me, will be compensated well. I used to live in Jogeshwari 6 months ago. Now I stay in Lodha Park in Parel, so clearly I have upgraded. Range, so look, man, again, it really depends fund to fund. Global funds, you would be making anywhere base of, I don't know, 40, 50 lakhs a year. Bonuses could go to 100%, probably even more. And I guess domestic funds, you could probably take a haircut on that, anywhere between 30 to 40% haircut. Some of these, as you go up the ladder, you make associate, you'll be making one base plus another 100%. So don't worry, there's a lot of money to be made. I guess the real wealth creation will come from the what is called carry, which is essentially the profits you make from your investments. So say I invested 100 rupees in company A, I managed to make a 3x on that investment, so I made a profit of 200 rupees. Typically how investing works is like I get to keep 20% of that. So in my example, I get to keep the 40 rupees. So say I invested $100 million, or call it 800 crores. I get to keep on that 1600 crores, not 20%, 320 crores. Right? 320 crores like get divided in the investment team, 6 of us. Obviously, it was not an equal share. I wish it was, but no. The head of the fund will keep lines. Most of that, like 50-60% of that, and 50-60% will be divided amongst the rest of us. So that is where the real wealth creation will come. That's the kick in investing, right? That is why you do this business.
You want to add something?
No, I think Ahmed covered it right, but at least for all of you guys who are young aspirants, I tell this to everyone. I was just discussing this before the session started. Also, money is not the reason to join this job, guys. Like literally straight disclaimer out, bold, italics, underlined in the most red font out there. Don't do investing if the ambition is to make money. There are hundreds of better ways to do that, and those ways can also give you a lot more. Like for example, I'm just throwing it out. Like there are influencers who make a lot more than our bosses, for example. but they like to do that. So don't get into the investing job because, like, you know, something which is not publicly said out very, very loud, and I think I should mention it. Like, all of us have done days where we've started our work at Monday 9 a.m. and then first time I went to sleep is Wednesday. So that we've all done those hours in our lives. The worst I've ever done is I went to office on Thursday, came back on Saturday. That was 7 years back. But all of us have done it, and the reason to not, and that time I was not getting paid well, I was in investment banking. But again, it's a path to it. Investment banking also, by the way, pays very, very, very well. So if you like banking, stay there. You don't necessarily have to come to investing. If some of you are very, very creative, there are obviously better ways to make money. But money should not be the reason. Of course, it's a massive motivator. So that helps everyone. Why not? Who doesn't like money? But don't make it the prime reason to do this. Make it the absolute last reason to do this. Yeah, that's the one advising you.
Yeah, just to add to what Anuvrat said, look, this is, as Ahmed also said, this is a very long-term career. So if money is the only motivation, like you'll probably not excel at this, which means that there needs to be high amount of interest and motivation. And money will stop motivating you again. We haven't made that kind of money yet, but that's what we hear from people who have spent enough number of years in this industry. So if you want to get into investing, think very hard why you want to do it, and there needs to be some genuine interest in the business, and only then you will do well. Because honestly, like there have been examples where people got into it, few years down the line they don't realize, they realize that they don't like this, or they were not good at it, and practically as an investor you don't have a hard skill. Like that's the reality. I mean, apart from being an investor, it's not like I can do anything. I can join a company and like turn a few things around. Like I cannot. So in a way, you are. I mean, you won't be unemployable, but you will be unemployable that way. So that's why like it's not something which you should do just because of the attraction of money. It's something which should genuinely interest you. Only then sort of the interest will align and hopefully good things will happen. So make sure like before you even get into investing, like a lot of times we tend to do that at very early stages in our career where we get attracted by all these shiny objects. And I think a lot of people get attracted by investing because of that, because it's supposed to be like, fancy and whatnot. But you should just reevaluate and think like, why do you really want to do it? If you feel like it doesn't excite you, just don't do it. It's a waste of time. 2-3 years you'll waste your time and you realize, look, I need to do something else, and I could have done this like 2 years before.
Yeah, I think I could resonate to that. Like I was working in a venture capital fund, and it was not that exciting to be honest. So I thought let's choose a different path. But yeah, I mean that is very much resonating to me as well. Maybe a last question before we start with the rapid fire round as well. AJ, it's to you. If you can help us understand about your entire experience, right from let's say scouting an investment to closing it. How was your entire experience of maybe 4 months or 6 months, whatever the time period was? And if you can help the audience, like what was your entire journey like in those 4 to 6 months span of time?
See, looking at an investment, there are days and there are types of investments you can close in a few days. In general, for growth, it takes a few months because you have to find the right investment. Sometimes there are obviously bankers who help you do this. So you find those investments faster, but then analysis, paralysis, all that Excel maths, talking with your team, discussing it with the group. And also just one more thing, investing is not an individual sport, it's a team sport. All of us have investment committees. It's not like I like a company tomorrow, I can go and give 100 crores or 5 crores or 10 crores or 25 crores. It doesn't work like that. Even if you become super senior boss, you individually cannot just go and do it. There is a group of people you have to work with. Hence I mentioned the start teamwork, it's very, very important. So that you work with these people, which also means you add more layers to it. That means you need to take more input, so it automatically adds to time. So it takes 4 to 6 months. The way process works is the starting process differs a bit. How you find that company, there could be a scenario where I read a news article, I liked the company, I liked the space, I met all 10 companies on my own, I reached out to those companies coldly. Could include cold phone calls, could include cold emails, could just be going to their offices, ask the receptionist, can I meet the CEO tomorrow, something like that. Could be anything. So that journey takes time. Sometimes it takes time to open up because why will the CEO talk to you? Right? That's also you should bring something to the table, right? Sometimes it could be you're too junior, sometimes you could have an insight or may not have an insight and so on and so forth. So that takes a few days, few weeks. Sometimes, like I've been doing it for 8-9 years, so these things are relatively faster for me. But 5 years before it wasn't. It took me a lot of time. Feel free to ask for help. Like my associates ask me for help when they need to open some company like that. And I used to do the same thing. So that takes a few days, few weeks. After that, you spend a lot of time, and the majority of the time is spent in analyzing every single possible thing out there. What I mean by that is industry trends, company trends, why will the company be better, which is what Ahmed had mentioned, and building that investment thesis. And it's not just the company. Company is only a part of it, a large part of it, but a lot of things impact the company as well. Right? Could be rules, could be regulations, could be licensing, could be competition, could be margin structure, could be some massive technological shift which could be amazing for you or which could kill your company. So need to know all of that. Again, pros and cons of making that investment. That analysis paralysis takes, again, a few weeks, could take a month, could take 2 months. After that, this is an important aspect which really differs venture with growth and PE, as in growth PE on this side and venture on this side, is what we call this thing called diligence, due diligence. What we do in that due diligence is over the last, say, anywhere from 2 weeks to 8 weeks, I may have formed my thesis about the company, about the view, about the financials. We get an outsider party also to help us further due diligence on that. Some of it could require testing our thesis. Like for example, I had invested in a company in Southeast Asia which was focusing a lot on specific type of customers. So we got an external party to do a customer survey for us I can't pick up phone call and call 1,000 customers. I can do it 10, 15, 20, 30. These guys can do for thousands of customers, right? So that also becomes a part of it. Again, adds to time. Massive financial analysis is required because a lot of times there are intricacies of balance sheet and P&L I may not understand because I'm not an auditor. Is there fraud there? Is there wrong accounting there? So we'll usually hire a big four who will take there anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks or 4 to 8 weeks, depending on how complex the company is. If it's a company which has 10 businesses, this obviously takes a lot more time. So they'll do and come the whole analysis. Then similarly, we hire lawyers for legal stuff because as you all know, world is getting a lot more complex. Like Akshay mentioned, EV as a sector, right? EV rules keep changing a lot. Is company following those rules? In general, is the company following contract laws in India, work labor laws in India? Are there any litigations that are coming on the company? I am again not a legal expert, but the lawyers are. So again, I said it's a broad, very broad team sport. It starts with yourself, and then your team, and then your investment committee, and then goes on to the vendors who also help you. And after that, we present the whole summary of what we've done over the last few weeks, including this diligence, to the investment committee update. In this process, at the start of the process, you think these are the 5 reasons I like, these are the 5 reasons are risks. Many times this just completely changes. Those 5 reasons don't exist anymore, there are new 5 reasons. These risks don't exist anymore, there are actually more risks, and you're like, oh, I didn't think of that. So you get to know a lot, learn a lot about that also, happened with all of us. So that's why these investments can take anywhere from a few weeks to a few months, depending on how complex it is. And you'll also realize many times you'll see in news, A company is buying B. Then 1 year later you hear a news, okay, that deal got cancelled. Why did that deal got cancelled? Something happened in diligence. Maybe the performance went bad, maybe they found out something, rules changed, maybe they found out fraud, maybe they found something else. So it is a time intensive, people intensive job. Hence all the skills we spoke about, network and analysis and paralysis, all those things matter a lot.
Which would be the most challenging part in the phase of, let's say, 3 months, 4 months?
Interesting. I think there is no one specific thing that is challenging. I think sometimes what also gets challenging is in the 3 months you've spent, the most challenging part is you need to keep testing your investment thesis. You need to keep testing why you want to invest. What are you missing? Like what can also happen is, I'll give you an example. You are looking at a company that, let's say hypothetically did 100 crores of revenue in April, and you spent 3 months, May, June, July, it may remain flat for those 100 crores. It may not do any growth at all. Now that's a flag. You need to understand why did it not grow. Is my investment thesis broken? Or is this a temporary issue which is happening right now during my evaluation process, but the thesis still remains intact? Again, it's a very easy statement to say, but there is hours and days of analysis that goes behind it. So I think the most important, the crucial phase is keep testing those theses and keep finding counters to the risks you have. You can't finish all the risks. There will always be some risk that you will have to underwrite. How sharply and how deeply you understand that risk is the most important aspect. Again, goes hand in hand with the investment thesis. And I think the other complex part could get in this is in the diligence time, when the financial and the legal diligence happen, because an external vendor is doing it. So there may come out some data points which you are not aware of. So just coming up to speed with that, solving those problems. So I think that phase becomes very, very crucial from getting the investment done. But sometimes it could be fast, sometimes the sourcing stage may take a lot of time. You may have a lot of competition in getting the deal done. So then again, you have to maneuver around it. So I don't think there is a specific part, but the overarching part to this. Anything, sorry, Ahmed, Akshay, you guys want to add?
I think I covered it well.
I think I'll just say one thing, like this is the hardest job in the world to do well. Like it sounds, I know I have explained it. If you want to do this, you could outsource everything, outsource your commercial diligence, outsource your financial, which we do, legal diligence. But if you would actually sit down, really think about why you want to put money in this business, what are you essentially underwriting, it is a very challenging job.
Yeah, I think thanks for clarifying that and being very candid and frank. So I think this was super insightful for me as well, and for everyone. I'm sure it would have been very insightful. Before we open the session for audience Q&A, let's just have some fun for a couple of minutes. We'll do a rapid fire round. The rules are pretty simple here. I'll just ask a question, so one by one, all 3 of you would have to answer. Like in this order itself, Akshay, AJ, and then Ahmed, because Ahmed is going to be the funniest one, I'm sure. So,
Very scared.
He's just being sarcastic. So again, pretty simple guys. These are very simple questions. Be as spontaneous as possible. The two of you have the advantage of thinking because the question is going to remain the
Maybe
same.
we should rotate the order after every question.
Yeah, I think.
No, I think this order is
All right. So let's begin, guys. We'll start off. If not growth investing, what alternate career would you have chosen?
Maybe consulting.
Chess.
Oh, stand-up comedian.
I mean, I told my dad I wanted to do stand-up comedy. He said, he laughed. There's the one time you're not supposed to laugh.
No, I think definitely you should try that. I've spoken about this. What is one?
Fired,
So that's never going to happen then. What is one craziest thing you have done to impress your bosses?
Way नहीं impress है.
Exactly. I wish they impressed with that. Maybe we'll start from that.
Ahmed, maybe anything.
This thing I've done to impress my boss. मैं कुशल really impress नहीं होते यार. कभी impress नहीं होते.
Okay, so we don't have any answer for that. Okay, cool. Let's go to the next question. I think Easy has answered this, but again we'll begin with you, Akshay. What is the highest number of hours you have worked in a day?
Funnily for me, like investing hasn't been as bad as consulting was, but I guess there it was 24 hours, obviously not as bad as what Anuvrat went through, but I think I walked into my office at 8, 9 a.m. and the next day I walked back at the same time in my house. But not in investing, thankfully ours are more predictable, I would say. Like it's not like suddenly you are exposed to something which you are not aware of. So if you plan well, it's okay. That's my experience.
Yeah, I think same for me now. That was obviously banking different, but one thing about investing ours is, as I think all three of us are stressed out, like all of us are always active, by the way. Like there is never a time we are not working. For example, and what I mean by that is, there is never a time where a new email may not come, a new ET article may not come. So that also becomes a part of, we don't call it work, but that is very essential for us. So again, if I have to take say hours, I think it's a nice, again, as you grow up in the industry, you learn nuances around, you become faster, you get more team to work with you. So as Akshay mentioned, like, it started usually, sometimes 8 a.m. but usually 9 a.m. and the day ends 8, 9 p.m. Sometimes it goes longer, but again, it's not always, it's those specific days, and so it's a very flexible thing. But there is never a time we're not on. So that's a caveat.
So when I joined SoftBank in 2021, look, that was a very different year. Everyone was investing very actively. So I joined in the middle of that craziness. So first 6 months I did 3 investments and 3 deals. And the last 1.5 years has been not really, we're evaluating, doing some portfolio work, but it's been a little bit relaxed.
Hence the party.
Precisely.
Number of hours was the question.
Yeah, I'm really walking by around 9:30 out of office by 7, hopefully. 2021 was very different. 2021 was like what, 12, 14, 16 hours, 18 hours. Times I haven't gone home. It's part of the job.
Got it. I think all of you are very much used to working for 12, 14 hours a day. So I think that's given. Let's see the next question. This is a tricky one again.
Start with it.
Yeah, I think let's start with you. How much money is too much money for you?
How much money is too much money? Kushal, I haven't made a lot of money, man. When I make a lot of money, I'll tell you, this is the number. I haven't reached that point yet.
Okay. I think it's going to be the same.
Yeah, somewhat same answer. I wish I reached that stage where I can answer this, but again.
I should ask this to your bosses, I think.
No.
See, so let's take this one.
Just to add, money is not the key motivator for all three of us, just FYI. It's obviously a motivator, but not a key motivator, and hence we don't have an answer.
It is for me actually, but okay, never mind. Let's see the next question. This you all of you have to answer. Let's begin with Akshay. What is one silliest mistake you have done in your professional career?
Silly, like are we talking about tactical mistake or what? Yeah, I mean a lot of them. Obviously, like when you start, especially in early years, you commit a lot of mistakes. But one that particularly comes to my mind is, and this was when I was in consulting and we were working for a private equity fund. So it's in a way like my mistake impacted our client. but I made a very silly mistake in the whatever Excel model we built for them, and some of the inputs were wrong, and as a result of that, the output was a mess. So that was the first time I made a massive mistake. Thankfully for me, even though I'm not proud of it, but nobody in my team caught it, so I caught it before anyone in my team caught it. So suddenly, I don't know why. I mean, I slept really late that night, 3 AM or something, we were working, and at 7 AM when I was sleeping, in my dreams, I was like, wait, what did I just do? I don't know why that happened, but it just happened. And then I realized, shit, I've made this mistake. Then I corrected it and all of that, and sent it. That was quite silly, but yeah, a lot of them.
Again, as Akshay said, he's working in his dreams. So as I said, we are always on. But serious mistake here. I have lost count of instances like these, by the way, at least in my career. But I would say the serious that comes to my mind, which I've never done again, is an email was supposed to go to A. I sent it to B, and B's email I sent it to C. So that was a disaster. I wish I could say no one caught it because I can't really undo it. So that happened. It's been a long time that happened. But I've never done it again. So I think that is the serious thing for me.
I'd say for me, man, serious mistake was probably so we have these weekly team meetings every Monday. I'm sure all of you have it, where we typically discuss about the companies we met last week, what's going on, what's the cover, who's investing, what is AJ doing, what is Lightspeed India growth investing in. So we had just met this company last week, and I just blurted out some random nonsense about this company. I should have thought through much better. And like all of the senior deal team members were there in front of me, and I made a fool of myself. I got a lot of feedback for that, but yeah. So in hindsight, I just need to prepare. Had I just had 5 minutes to gather my thoughts, I would have presented well. But in hindsight, like I know where I went wrong.
Yeah, I appreciate the candid and frank answers which you guys are giving. The second and last rapid fire question. What is one thing you like the most about your jobs?
I think you're very intellectually honest. Honestly, if you think about like any other job where you don't have a skin in the game, the incentives are very different. Maybe it's if you're in banking, if you're in consulting, you are likely working to make a client happy so that you get the repeat business or get more of the business. Here, I think your incentives are very, very aligned. Like you want to make a decision which will help you make a good investment, and everything else will follow. Which means that you have to be extremely intellectually honest. You're not like hiding information. You're not massaging the information in a certain way so that things look in a certain way. I think it's like absolutely intellectually honest, and you have very, very wide playground. Like you can do absolutely anything and everything under the sun to get to the right answer. So I think that's something which I really like about this job.
Yeah, I think I'll do a plus one to that. But for me, I think the diversity of people you meet is the absolute best aspect I love about the job. And as I've said, I think multiple times in this last 1 hour, this is a people's job. Meeting new people, learning about new topics. Like there are many times a day. 9 AM I'm looking at something in fintech. 11 AM I'm looking at something in biotech. 2 PM I'm looking at something in consumer. 4 PM I'm talking to a EV company. Right? In a day I can just context change many times. Sometimes it gets harsh on the brain because then you are all over the place. But I think it just energizes me. Sectors, different people. Again, this also means one day I could be talking to a plant manager assembling a bike, and the next day I could be talking to the best absolute coder out there on digital payments, for example, right? So I think that diversity is very important to me. So I love that about this job, and I can't find any other job which can give me this. So hence I'm doing this.
I think Akshay and AJ have covered very well. I think for me, I get to learn something new every day. It's very simple, right? Like there's so many new businesses. SoftBank, they're always investing in new age companies. Like I've looked at companies which, I can't even begin, right? Like take your pick, man. All of the trends, all the companies you use today, you use UPI on Paytm, you order your food from Swiggy, you stay in an Oreo, you take an Ola to work, all of these are SoftBank portfolio companies, but at the same time, yeah, little bit. So yeah, that's my take from the job, and I get to learn something new every day.
Got it. And the last rapid fire question here. How many times you've had fights in the last 1 year with your spouse or girlfriend because you came late from office?
Mine is actually zero. Because she is also in the same field. So lot different reasons to fight, not this. But mine is zero, but everyone has some of them. Those banter keeps happening, right? But not nothing major yet. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, I can go next. I mean, I've had a lot of fights, but again, none because I showed up late or anything. Because as I said, life is predictable, so you can manage a few things. So there are no surprises to either of the parties, either at work or your whatever spouse or girlfriend. So yeah, zero for me.
Ahmed, everyone is waiting to hear.
I'm not dating, so.
Oh, okay. So that's a message here. But yeah, fine. I think this was super like fun and a lot of insights. Now I think we'll open the forum for audience Q&A. I'll request Sai and Vishal to just get the mics to the audience. If anyone has any question, guys, please raise your hands and I'll just request Sai and Vishal to take the mic. Sai, please take the mic from here. Yeah, I think we have one over there.
Yeah, so Anuvrat, you mentioned about the entire process that takes place in the entire deal that takes place. So in the investment banking also the entire framework, the broad framework is similar. But like initially you mentioned that there are a lot of differences. So could you highlight or more elaborate on the same? Like I'm currently in investment banking, so I found the main structure a lot similar. So how is it not different? I understand that.
So I'll tell you, see, the core DNA is different. Like for example, let me take another analogy. You're buying a house, you go through a broker, risk is mine. Risk is not with the banker, right? Like investment banking, well, as complex and as it requires different level of brain energy, even sometimes more than investing. So again, process is same, but you move on to the next transaction. When I invest in a company, I'm stuck in that company till the time I sell that company.
You are the buyer and the broker.
Yeah, correct. So it could remain for 8, 9, 10 years. So the paralysis we do at our end is a lot, I would say it's 1,000 times more than what the investment banking guys see on that side, because I think the banking is more process oriented, answering investor questions, right? So those questions come from something. Like for example, a lot of times your investors would send you a list of 10 questions. If you notice, he may send 10 questions, I may send 15, he may send 20. And there will be days you may not find a single common question. That means very different analysis is going on in these 3 different funds. There could be aspects I know about this asset better than Ahmed already. And there could be aspects Ahmed would know about this asset which I don't know. Hence I'm asking questions, he already knows, he's asking questions I already know, for example. So I think that's the core tenet which is different, that the risk is very different of who the party is. At the end of that defines the process.
So out of CA, I did my articleship from KPMG in audit. I realized I don't want to do audit for the rest of my life. I moved into investment. I was very fortunate. I got an internship at Pavel in their investment banking team. Pavel is my
बोले तू बोले
For the generations that are coming up, the country has no reason to worry. Now my generation will really relax that the youngsters are in very safe hands.
ऐसा सामने सामने है
On a Saturday morning and attending this. It was wonderful having you here. And yeah, look forward to having you in future events as well. If you